Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our special segment of the United Kingdom's government. Today, we will dive into a unique system that governs the UK. So, Javi, can you give us your quick summary?
Alan, the UK has a parliamentary democracy combined with a constitutional monarchy. In simple terms, people elect their government representatives, but the monarch still plays a symbolic role. It's a system that balances tradition with modern politics.
Exactly. And while the King Charles III is the head of the state, he doesn't have a legislation power. That's the job for a parliament, where the most of the decision making happens. So let's move into parliament actually works. Alright, so parliament itself has two main parts, the House of the Commons and the House of the Lords. Javi, can you tell us about this?
Sure, Alan. The House of Commons is the elect body where members of parliament or MPs represent the people. It's the main force for passing laws and addressing key issues like healthcare and education.
And there is the House of the Lord, which is elected members are appointed of expertise in the area like business or science. They can the chance on the bill, but don't have the final say on them.
So it's a bit like having two lenses on each law, one by elected representatives and another by experienced reviewers. This balance really shapes UK governance. Now, let's discuss the Prime Minister's role in all this.
So Javi, who is actually in charge of the government?
That would be the Prime Minister, currently Rishi Sunak. Unlike some countries where leaders are directly elected in the UK, the leader of the party with the most seats in the House of Commons becomes the Prime Minister. They are responsible for running the government and setting policies. Yes,
And the Prime Minister so appoints a cabinet. There's a minister who leads specific areas like the Secretary of the State for Health or the Chancellor of the Executive. Together they handle the critical decisions and keep the government running smoothly.
and the Prime Minister usually has a strong influence on laws, especially with a majority in Parliament. Next up, uh, let's look at the judicial side of the government.
The UK is also has a distinct legal system which operates independently from the parliament and the monarchy. Javi, you can break that down for us?
Of course, Alan, the judiciary headed by the Supreme Court ensures that all laws respect the Constitution and people protects rights. This independent court can review decisions made by the government to check for fairness and legality.
So, in essence, no one, not even the government, can above the law. It's a system based on the rule of the law, where even citizens and officials is accountable of the same rules.
Exactly. It's one of the core values that keeps the system fair. And now let's cover how elections bring fresh voices to parliament.
Finally, elections. The UK holds a general election every 5 years, allowing citizens to choose the Minister of the Parliament, the House, Commons, Heavy. How does that work?
Well, Alan, in a general election, each voter selects an MP for their local area, known as a constituency. The party with the majority of MPs in the Commons typically forms the government, and their leader becomes the prime minister.
It's straightforward yet allows for diverse representation across different parties. If no single party wins a majority, there is a room for conciliation government, where two or more parties work together from the government.
Exactly. This flexibility in forming governments keeps the system adaptive, and that's our overview of the UK government. It's a financing system that combines tradition with the principles of democracy.
Thank, Thanks for joining us in exploring this topic. For more in depth, cover state tunnels. Citizenship. There are different ways to apply for British citizenship based on your circumstance. If you are eligible in more than one way, you can choose which way to apply. If you apply for citizenship, you will need permission to stay in the UK until you guarantee the citizenship. Your permission need to last until you have your citizenship ceremony. If you have indefinite leave to remain or settled or pre-settled status under the UA stamp scheme, this counts as a permission to stay.
Good evening, welcome on board the BA 282. Flight time today is 9 hours now.
Someone should have told you that you'd always have a place to go. Oh, I thought you would have known. I remember when we had a battle hurricanes. Sounds and fade away. Someone should have told you that you'd always have a place to go. Oh.
Now let's talk about ILR. Indefinite leave to remain is how you're settled in the UK. It's also called settlement. It gives you the right to live, work, and stay here for as long as you like and apply for benefits if you are eligible. You can use it to apply for British citizenship. You may be able to apply if you have work visa. You must usually have lived and worked in the UK for 5 years. If you have a Tier 1 visa, it can be 2 or 3 years. If you have an innovator, founder, or global talent visa, it can be 3 years. You may also need to meet the salary or financial requirements. This depends of your visa. How you apply depends on whether you have a tier T international sports person or skilled worker visa, have a scale up worker visa, and have a global talent tier 1 entrepreneur or investor visa, and have a innovator founder visa. represent an overseas business, have a Turkish worker or business person visa, are a private servant in a diplomatic household with an international agreement visa, or a domestic worker. You may be able to apply if you have a partner, parent, or child or other relative settled in the UK, either as a British citizen or a person with indefinite leave to remain. How you apply depends on which visa you have and how your family members settled. There are other ways to apply if your partner has died, if your relationship ended because of domestic violence, if you may be able to apply if you've been living here for 10 years or more, if you there's a different way to apply if you have a visa that's on the basis on your private life applications open in June 2022. If you can apply if you have been living in the UK for 5 years on a UK ancestry visa, if you some Commonwealth citizen have right of abode in the UK, this means you can live or work in the UK without immigration restrictions. Check if you can be applied to prove your make right of above in the UK.
PIA stands for European Economic Area, an intellectual agreement that links the European Union with two of the four European Free Trade Association EFTA states, Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway.
Now boarding from Mexico City, flight 137. Please remove all outer clothing. This is last and final call from Mexico City. All passengers are Passenger Frank Smith, this is your final call from Mexico City.
Now let's talk about of government. In the UK, the Prime Minister leads the government with the support of the cabinet and ministers. The Prime Minister is the leader of His Majesty's government and is ultimately responsible for all policy and decisions. The Prime Minister also oversees the operation of the civil service and government agencies, appoints members of the government, is the principal government figure in the House of Commons, and the cabinet is made up of the senior members of government. Every week during Parliament, members of the cabinet, secretaries of state from all departments and some other ministers meet to discuss the most important issues for the government. Ministers are chosen by the Prime Minister from the members of the House of Commons and House of Lords. They are responsible for the actions, successes, and failures of their department. They have some departments that was Attorney General's Office, Cabinet Office, Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, Department for Aid, Commonwealth and Development Office, Department of Ministry of Justice, Department of HM Treasury, Department of Northern Ireland Office, Department Home Office, Department Office of the Advocate General for Scotland, Office of the Leader of the House of Commons, of Ministry of Defense, Office of the Leader of the House of Lords, Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, and the UK Export Finance. The civil service does the practical and administrative work of the government. It is coordinated and managed by the Prime Minister in their role as Minister for the Civil Service. Around half of all civil servants provide services direct to the public, including paying benefits and pensions, running employment services, staffing prisons, issuing driving license. The King of the United Kingdom has several impacts on the country, including national identity. The King is a focal point for national unity, pride, and identity. Continuity. The monarchy provides stability and continuity to the political system as monarchs remain in place even when governments change. International relations. The monarchy contributes to the UK's soft power in the world. Ceremonial functions. The king carries out key ceremonial functions such as the state opening and the king's speech. Appointments. The king appoints the prime minister, minister senior, choose, and other officials. Royal assent. The king formally approves bills passed by parliament, making them law. Parliamentary roles. The king formally dissolves parliament before a general election. Head of the British Armed Forces. The king is the head of British Armed Forces. Best wing honors. The king bestows honors in a non-partisan manner. The king's powers are largely symbolic and ceremonial, and he is constitutionally obligated to follow the government's advice.
House of Commons. The UK public elects 650 members of the Parliament. They represent the interests and the concern of the House of Commons. Considering and propose the new laws and can structure the government policies by asking minister questions about the current issues, either in the Commons Chamber or the commitments.
Now let's talk about House of Lords. The House of Lords is the second chamber of the UK Parliament. It is independent from and complements the work of the elect House of Commons. The Lords shares the task of making and shaping laws and checking and challenging the work of the government. Members spend more than half their time in the House considering bills, draft laws. All bills have to be considered by both houses of parliament before they can become law. During several stages, members examine each bill line by line before it becomes an act of parliament.
Hey, I've just finally got some time to do my own thing. I'll send you a link. I'm doing some prints, trying to make accessories from them. I'm really, really happy you like them. Hey, it's Kay Davis. What's happened?
To be honest, it's just not what we're looking for.
Kay, hey, good to see you.
Today's side quest is sponsored by our dear friends over at Kingdom Marker. But more about 10 of them. For now, let's think of the UK. Centering the centerpiece of the passage of a miracle tale who's going to be of Kingdom, to be the king or queen ruling the 10% of the time. You will be the United Kingdom remains a kingdom even this day of the position of the monarch now become essential ceremonially with a royal power firmly in the grasp of the parliament. But when did the transition happen after did the King's Parliament get away with it? Well, this struggle for power has been going for quite some time, way before the United Kingdom became united. It's not really sure it's united now. We need to go back in the 13th century. England was its own thinking back then, unlike most medieval kingdoms. All the time in the constant power struggle between the king and the vassals. Surprisingly, the parliament mess was started by King John, famous for almost selling England to Iceland. When his Baron rebellion attacked him, the Magan Karatan in 1215, they demanded parliament representation in the Grand Council with the head right to reject any new taxes proposed by the king. Now John tried to backtrack and wage war on the barons, but he did last year and his next year also Henry III. Well, a little shows the matters say pretty much in the 13th century. The kings of England had to grow through the Great Council to raise any meaningful sum of money. The first time the council was referred to as a parliament was in 1260 when the now grown-up Henry tried to fund his wedding to Eleanor of Provence, who has just 2 years old all the time. But as a minor detail, now the original parliament only got together at the request of the king, and its members were entitled to feudal or ecclesiastical lords. However, Henry soon realized that these weren't the only people with money in England. Some of the merchants and the kings collabed with the equally if no more rich. Henry started inviting such commoners in 1254, which obviously wasn't taken well by the baron. They rose up with the rebellion not long after, and, like the King John, they eventually set Henry down and the scenes in the province of Oxford. The commoners could stay, but the king's advisor will be elected by the barons, and currently, Parliament will never meet 3 times per year, and only when the king felt like it. Over the next century, as the king of England, Duke is with France during the 100 years of war, they had to earn Parliament's favor to secure funds their campings. The barons were happy just to be left in their own devices. But the commons actually want to see you take no change. An act of protest in 1341, the commons assembled in the separate building from the barons. And that's how the House of Commons was born. Before long, the commons were demanding rights like veto power over royal expenditures, the ability of draw new laws, and use duty safe for taxation. In 1397, King Richard II decided to punish this. Thus, the minds are in the reigning parliament, in which always backfired spectacularly. How many times do you have to teach a lesson, Holman? This time around, Parliament have to king dispose and the grave the crowd to his cousin. Then for the next 200 years, the powers of parliament were respected until we get the Charles Freeze. He too tired to raise taxes without consent and brave civil wars. Parliament put him in a trial for treason. The king argued that could be committed a treason against himself, and this is when the parliament got to Britain the idea to separate the idea of the king and the country. Charles Fritz was judged by a traitor not himself but to England and he was executed. Unfortunately, Charles' son, James II, had a similar idea but has divine right to rule. So foreign parliament figured out this spicy situation. They collaborated with his daughter Mary and her husband William to lead the Dutch Republic. The organization has a massive invasion of England into the Dutch invasion to be successful. Parliament deposed James and gave it the crown to William and Mary in exchange for signing the Bill of Rights, which constantly established Parliament's power over the king. Eventually, the English Parliament voted to merge with the Scottish ones, forming the Kingdom of Great Britain, and 100 years later also added Ireland with a mix of from the United Kingdom also and love. Now, will that is absolute royal power are gone, you can still read them thanks to their friend over Kingdom Marker, the hits free play mobile strategy game. If Kingdom Marker, you can build castles, raise meeting, and share ritmo FAV. Over your foes in a spectacular fashion, you can forget alliance for a go or adventure, but most importantly, you can sacrifice the weak and unfortunately in the volcano. Use a good in that is that anyway? For competition PvP to RPG storytelling, there is little to build for everyone in Kingdom Marketer, and that's the best part. It is all free. You can also download in iOS or Android by scanning the QR code in the screen or by using the link in the description. Let me know if you think there are comments below. Start for the next powerful episode of the side quest.
And it is all. Thank you so much for your attention.